I want to add another behavior type to our NPC. So he has some more functionality, something that he can do. Before I get to that, I need to explain arrays. Well, in this case, a built-in array. Now, first up, I'm going to show you a link, again on the Unify community, the Unity Wiki. Which kind of array or collection should I use? There are many different types of arrays. We're going to be working here with the built-in array. So just scroll down there. Now we see a bit of a description and some examples using C# and JavaScript. So we'll be looking at these examples here. Now the best way for me to do it, because I'm not very technical, is to do what I have been doing, is create an example scene. I'm going to start with a new script. It's going to be my built-in array example. And I'm going to create a new scene for that. So we can have our example running its own scene. Right, let's look at some of the basics of an array. So what is an array first? An array is a single variable which can store many variables of the same type. So when you have an array, again, you need to typecast it to something. So if we create a variable for an array, it's going to be my array, and we have to typecast it. Okay, in this example, I'm just going to use integers. Okay, now when you're declaring an array, and all the values in an array are within these square brackets. Okay, so that's just declaring an array, but we haven't given it a size. We don't know how many values are going to be in our array. So how do we do that? This would be my array equals new, and we're going to have an array of integers. So it's going to be a new integer. Now, how many values are we going to put into it? This is where we put it in. Just say I wanted to store 10 integers. Then I would simply put 10 in the square brackets. Okay. Actually, I shouldn't have all this commented out. Let this be our example. Okay, we can't do that outside of a function. Alright, so we have an array which we have declared, but it has no size or anything. So in here, we're going to give it a size. Let's save that out. Okay, so far we have no compilation errors, that's great. I'll create an empty game object. I just want to mention, I know I always use the same names for the scene, for the game object, and that's just for me, so I can see that this script is going to be in this scene, and it's attached to this game object. They don't have to be the same name at all. Okay, that's just me creating a convention, so I can look through all the stuff that I've done and know what's where. Okay, so I've created a game object. Let's put that built-in array example script on there. I'm going to save the scene, of course. Now we have the variable here, but it doesn't have a value like it normally does. What if we click down the drop-down box? See, it's saying it has a size of 0. We haven't given it any values, or we haven't even told it how long it is. We have in the start function. So let's just hit play and see what happens now. Okay, so we have set the size of our array to 10. Okay, and then we have 10 different integers now we can store. Now it is important to note, when you are counting through the variables of an array, they start at 0. So you can go 0 to 9, there are 10 values here. Okay? So I will put that as a rough example. Okay? So if we have my array, Okay, we're going to have our array within these curly braces. So I'm just going to use the numbers like they are in the positions. So we have an integer 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. While that is actually populating the array with integer values, I've used the number of the positions. So if we want to read this position here, we wanted to know what our array of position, this is going to be position 2. Okay? Even though it's 1, 2, 3 along, arrays start counting at 0. Alright? So again, let's just copy that. Show you what I mean. Let's mix them all up now. 9, 4, 7. Okay? So that's more what things are going to probably look like, aren't they? We're going to have numbers and variables. We're going to have integers and an array of integers all over the place. Okay? As you got here as a reference, this is where the position is. Okay, so if we wanted to know what was in position 5, we'd say, what is it in my array position 5? And we would get 2 back. Now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's 6 along, but arrays start counting from 0. Alright, so how do we put values into our array through code? Come back to our example. So we have here my array at position number equals the value. Let's see if we can do that. So my array, at what position are we going to set? Let's set the first one, 0 equals, let's set it to 12. So it's still an integer. It's just something that we can see. Alright, I'm going to save that out. Hit play. Now we've given our array a size of 10, and we see at element 0, at the first position, which is position 0, we've now given it a value of 12. Okay? Let's show another example of that. Let's set position 6 this time. Okay, so as you see, if we leave it like this, we're setting them all to null. Now, a null for an integer is 0. So all of our array, when we first assign it a size, they're all going to be populated at 0. Now we're going to set position 0 to 12. We're going to set position 6 as 55. Let's check that out. Okay, now we have it. So, at position 6, remember counting from 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At position 6, we've now given it a value. Now what happens if we forgot about the size? Just say we thought, okay, we've set it to have a size of 10, and we want the last value to equal 99. Now let's see what happens when we're trying to set a position of 10, when we're actually counting from 0. So the highest position is only 9. What's going to happen now? Now we have index out of range. Okay, the index is this value here we've given it. Okay, normally known as an index. An index. Okay, which position, which index? Okay, we said position 10. Now counting from 0, that would be up here. But it doesn't exist in our array of size 10. So we count from 0. Okay, I think I've said it enough times. Alright? So let's get rid of that completely. So if we want that to be the last position in a size of 10, counting from 0, that would be position 9. Let's try that one more time. So we don't have an out of range exception error, and and we see the last value has been given, the last position has been given that value. Okay, so there's a little something about built-in arrays and how to populate them. Sometimes if we want to read from a position, let's just do a debug. Okay, we know we're setting it here anyway, so let's just say we want to check through our script what is in position 6. So where's my array at the index? So what is my array at position 6? We should get a number. Let's just even put some text in there. At position 6, array value is. There we go. So that'll give us a nice little debug telling us what's happening. Oops. Okay, so we've given our array a size, we've populated a couple of the values at the index, and we've also asked our script to tell us what is at position 6. And it's telling at position 6 the array value is 55. So counting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it is indeed 55. Okay, so that's just a little bit on arrays. Now, I don't know if I went over this, but built-in arrays are specifically for a collection of values that is always going to be a fixed size. There's nowhere in the script where we're going to change our array from length of 10 to the length of 8 or anything like that. Once we declare the size of a built-in array, it stays at that size. So we can't be adding more values into it. How can we check how big our array is? And dot length. Okay, let's see if we can get that working. What is the size of the array? Okay, we'll do a debug again. My array size has a length of, and what was it? It was my array dot length. Okay, so we can find out how big our array is. Clear that, so we can start again. Let's run it. So there is our dot length value that's been returned. And indeed is showing our size is 10, so it has a length of 10 values stored. Okay, so built-in arrays are just for a specific fixed size. Okay, the fastest array in Unity for this purpose only. Okay, if there is a fixed and known number of items that you want to store, this is the best choice, and this is how you do it. And this is the only place where you use it. Okay, and that's what we covered already. Declared by specifying the type of object you want to store, followed by brackets. Okay, so what else can we do? So far, we've created an array, we've set a size of the array, we've found out the length of the array, and we've also already read from an index, okay, what position in the array is what value. Okay, let's set, and we've also set the value actually. So we've pretty much covered every example there in the demonstration. That's pretty good news. Okay, so that's declaring. That's setting the size. Let's put these in. Okay. Giving a value at a position in the array. Okay, and that's the same for all of these. At a set position, we're assigning a value. Okay, and then here is an example of reading back from a position. So at position 6, this will return us what the value is at position 6. Okay, here's how we find out the length of an array. You can even put all this together in something else which is new that I haven't introduced yet either. And this is a for loop. A for loop is where we can repeat some actions for a certain number of times. So let's do that. I'm going to comment all this out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a for loop that will debug what is at every position of the array. This will show off where my array length comes in handy too. So we start the for condition with for. Now I set my brackets up first. And we're going to be counting because we want to loop this. This is a for loop. Okay, so we're going to keep looping until a condition is met in here. Okay, so we're going to count. So we're going to increment integers. We're going to check our integers compared to the length of our array, which is an integer number 2. So let's create a variable to store that count. It's usually var I int equals 0. So we're going to start counting at 0. And then we're going to say while I is less than what? Let's use the example of the array length because we want to count through every value in our array. So while I is less than my array dot length, we're going to add to that count. So we're going to count 0, 1, 2. So we're going to keep adding until we get to the array length. So we're going to I plus plus. We have it. And that is a for loop. So we have a value that starts at 0, and then while that value is less than another value, we're going to increment our loop value. Okay. So what are we going to do in here? Let's just see the for loop working first. Let's go debug log. Okay. Let's just show us the value I so we can see that counting. I can show you why we use less than here too at the same time. Oh, and I've actually written something wrong. Let's check that. Semicolon, comma instead. There we have it. So all these different parameters in the for loop have to be separated by a semicolon. I just accidentally put the comma in there. Okay, so checking that again. So we're creating a variable, which is our counter. It starts at 0. We're checking if it's less than an array, semicolon, increment. Okay, and then we're going to each time we loop through, we're going to debug that value. So let's see that happen. Okay, that's better. So hit play. It all happened pretty instantly, but there's our for loop running. So I was 0, I was 1, I was 2, I was 3, all the way up to 9. So we're incrementing our variable I, and we're checking while I is less than the length of our array. We're going to increment. So we're debugging our position. We're debugging I at the moment. We want to use I as a position. We want to use I as the index of our array, and then read each value, just like we were doing here. Debug with I plus. So position I. What do we have? My array at index position. So now we're going to run the for loop and see what values we have in each position of our array. Play. Okay, we're seeing the same thing as we have in our inspector there. So at 0, we have 12, 1, we have 0, on and on, 6, 55, 7, 8, 9, we have value 99. So you see that's counting from 0 to 9, but again, because the array position starts at 0, we're going to 9. So if I said here, if I was less than or equal to my array length, what do you think will happen? copy that. It's the same thing as before. When we ask for something that is a position outside of our array range, we get an index that's out of range exception. Okay, so we've gotten to 9 here, but then obviously we tried to ask for position 10. We don't have position 10. So that's why when we're iterating through a length of arrays, use less than. Okay, while I is less than 10, remember? So we could use that back. We're going to debug the length, and that's what we're using in our for loop. We'll see why. Okay, so it has a length of 10, but it starts counting at 0. So it never equals 10. It doesn't get to 10. It's less than 10. It's 9. Alright? So that's when we're looping through an array. We use less than the length. Okay, that's pretty much it.